If you're building a chatbot, you might notice that sometimes the answers aren't that accurate. And that's because it's the way that you're inputting the data inside of the chatbot. So in this video, I want to break down how you can easily optimize your chatbots to get the most accurate responses. So the first thing is, before you even start building your bot, what you want to do is pinpoint the exact documentation that you're going to upload into the knowledge base. So you just want to hop into some type of drawing tool and just map out what type of documents, what type of questions, what type of answers that your customers or clients are going to be asking. So in this case, let's just say that we want to provide some FAQ information, some frequently asked questions. Maybe we also want to provide a customer stories, and maybe we also want to provide some customer support documentation as well. And the thing about it, when you're building out these different chatbots, you want to make sure that you don't overwhelm it with information. You want to provide quality information, which is why I'm only sticking to 3 different things. In the FAQ, maybe there's someone asking about pricing, and that's probably one of the top questions that we're going to get is, how much does this thing cost? And then for customer stories, maybe there's going to be people who want to see examples of how this is working. So we're going to say examples. And then for customer support docs, maybe they have specific questions on how this integrates with what they already use, or maybe they want to know what type of functionality or features does your product or service have. So then maybe we just want to say more specifics, right? And we can get more detailed there. But by doing this work, which takes no longer than 5 minutes, you'll be able to really pinpoint the documentation or documents you need to provide. So once you understand what type of documents, what type of questions, what type of answers that you think your bot is going to be interacting with the most, then you can hop into Chatling to build out your first bot. So we're going to go into chatling.com. We're going to log into our account, and then we're going to start the process of building our bot. For this case, I'm going to start a new bot just by clicking on Create Chatbot. And then I'm going to start from scratch just so that you can see this entire process. So I'm going to go Chatling demo. I'll say Chatling demo 2, create chatbot. And now we can start adding the different documentation. So remember, we did FAQ, customer stories, customer support docs. Okay. So we'll go into our knowledge base here, and you'll see here that we have no data sources added, but we can add those data sources by clicking on add new. And then you'll see a new page where we can add websites, sitemaps, URL lists, documents, text, FAQ, or connect with Zoho. Now, one thing to know about adding a new data source is when you add a website or a sitemap or a URL list, it's not going to be as accurate if you do something like document, text, or FAQ. And the reason for that is because the way that the AI processes questions and text, it's going to get more familiarity with a document, text, FAQ versus crawling a website. Because what happens is if you enter a website URL, so for example, I will enter our URL here, so chatling.ai, what's going to happen is once I click on next, it's going to analyze this URL for all of the links on our website. So you'll see all our URLs here. And if we scroll down and we click on submit, all of our URLs will be here in our knowledge base. And if we quickly go into the builder here, and we can just quickly build a bot, and we'll hop back into the knowledge base in a second, but I just want to show you what happens when you actually provide it, those URLs versus text. It's not going to be as accurate. And I'm going to go into the blocks here, and I'm going to select text, and inside of this text element, I'm just going to save the information that the end user inputs into a variable. So I'm just going to go down here and enter a new variable called question. And I'm now going to add another block here by clicking on block, and we're going to add an AI module that will give a response to this question, meaning that when a person enters a question, the AI is going to be able to answer that question. So I'm going to click on this group here, and then I'm just going to add in the question variable by clicking on this bracket, and then just scrolling to find the question variable that we just saved inside of group 1. Now what I can do is I can connect these so that when the conversation happens, the first thing is it captures the text, and then it goes into the question. One other thing I'm going to do is make sure that it routes back into the original question so the conversation can continue to flow. So now I'm going to click on save, and then I'm going to ask it a question by clicking on preview. And now you'll see the difference when I ask this question. So I'll say, how much does Chatling cost? And I'm going to hit enter. And now you'll see that we can get a really detailed pricing information for this particular question. The key thing here is that when you're providing the information into the bot, you want to do quality over quantity. You don't want to just overload the bot with information without it being formatted properly. It's just not going to work as well as if you're very direct and pinpoint the information versus just mass uploading information. So the next thing that we want to do, right, we got the pricing here, so we got our FAQ, right? The FAQ, the top question that everyone asks is, how much is our product? How much is our service? Okay, so we got this stuff. Now what we want to do is provide some customer stories. So in this case, what you would want to do is just find all the customer stories that you have either on your website or just by asking your customers. It's going to help when people have specific questions for specific industries, for example. So for us, we can actually go into our website and we have some stories here. So we have this story here. We'll copy this and we will just place this as text. Instead of FAQ, we'll just paste it as text and we'll say customer stories. And I'm just going to add some lines here just so that it separates each customer story. But I'm just going to paste this and get rid of this image here. And then I'll do the same thing for the next line. And if you have your customer stories in a doc, you can also provide that in the doc. But for us, I'm just going to paste them like so, just so you can see this process. So then I'm going to just make sure that this also comes across just so we know who said this. I'm going to click on submit. Now we have our new data source for text, which is going to be the customer stories. So if I go back into the knowledge base, you'll see here that this is pending here. And if you go into the links, there's no link. If you go into FAQ, this is already processed. We'll go into text and it's pending. So we'll let it pend and then we'll be right back. All right, so we got our text document all processed. So now I'm going to go back into the builder by going into builder, and then let's test it out to see if it pulls in the information. So I'm going to click on preview and then ask it a question and say, what is Chatling most used for and how does it help businesses? And then we can enter there and it should pull in some information from the customer stories. So you can see here we got customer support, lead generation, e-commerce, enhancement, and some other things as well down here. Again, being very specific with the information that you're providing into the knowledge base will help gear the AI and the bot to make sure that the responses are more accurate. Now, let's move on to a new data source here. So if you remember, the last thing we're going to talk about is customer support docs. Now, you can easily do this by connecting your Zoho account by just clicking on new account, just giving it a name, and then you'll be able to connect it. But you can also do a document. So if you have a customer support document, you can add that document here. You can also do a website. So for example, our documentation is on a website. So you can see here, if I go to documentation, that is going to open up a new website. So essentially, you could provide each individual one of these articles here to the AI, or you can just provide the URL. So for example, what I could do is, let's say I wanted to provide documentation about creating a chatbot. So what we can do is we can copy that URL and then have back into our builder where we're adding a new data source. And what we can do is go into the URL list and then enter the URL that we want to specify to add to our knowledge base. So then we can click submit and it's going to submit that specific website versus if you were to do website and you enter our URL, it's going to scan every single link on that URL versus a one specific URL if you do the URL list. So now what we could do is we could test this once more. So I'm going to go back into the builder and then I'm going to click on preview and I'm going to ask it how to get started with Chatling. And now the bot is going to reference all the documentation that we just added and give us step-by-step instructions on how to use Chatling. So right, it says create a chatbot after signing up. You can either create a chatbot from scratch or use a template. You can build your chatbot, go to populate your knowledge base, and it's actually giving us step-by-step instructions based off the documentation. You also see here that it says for more detailed instructions, you can visit the Chatling link, right? So this is actually linking back to the getting started documentation that we provided it before, which is really nice and handy. Now, one thing to know is if you provide your bot with a lot of URLs, a lot of documentation, sometimes it may hallucinate, right? AI is not perfect. It may hallucinate, but there is a way that you can help guide the AI with fine tuning. So let's say that this link was incorrect, right? What we can do is let's just hop back into our knowledge base here. And I'm just going to click on add new data source. I'm going to go to text. So what I'm going to do is just paste in some URLs here. What it's basically going to do is guide the AI to find the most relevant URL for the particular thing. So for example, if you knew that the Chatling pricing page is always chatling.com/pricing, then you can indicate that this is the Chatling pricing URL. And that will allow the bot to know, okay, if the person is asking about pricing and they want more information about pricing, I can link them to this URL, which will have a better response from the customer who's asking that query. So if you ever see the bot hallucinating, this typically happens when you add a lot of URLs, but because we only added 119 URLs, it's not going to hallucinate as much, let's say, if you added 1,000, right? Which I wouldn't recommend. Again, quality over quantity. But if that's the case, you can do something like this to pinpoint the URL that's specific to a particular question. Now, there are some other things that you can do when it comes to fine-tuning your bot. What you can do is you can go into your conversations and click on specific conversations. And you'll see here that within each conversation, there's the ability to say fine-tune answer. So I'm going to fine-tune this answer. And now what I can do is I can actually fine-tune the exact answer that this bot gave this particular customer. And I can add additional information here or not, right? Depending on if the answer is accurate or not. But you get the point. You can actually add in additional details or context. So next time when someone has the same particular question, the bot is going to respond accurately. The other thing that you can do is watch the conversations that are happening by clicking on conversations, and you can kind of see what people are asking. Obviously, this is me asking how to get started with Chatling. And you can review what's happening in the conversation, and then based off that, you can go back into your builder and modify what's happening within the sequence. And one thing you could do is go into the AI configuration on the left-hand side here, provide it specific instructions by clicking on add instructions so you can actually guide it and give it even more details on what you wanted it to do or not wanted to do. You can also go into the settings here and provide a name for your product just so that the AI doesn't hallucinate. So let's just say Chatling here. You can also change the model, which I highly recommend that you do, just so that you can see the different responses. So you could choose Claude, you could choose Gemini, you can also obviously choose GPT, which is going to be the default. Recommend doing this just so that you can see the different responses and how the models differ from the responses. Then you can also do language. I would recommend just keeping it to auto. And then temperature. So the temperature is going to determine how often is the response going to be the same. So is it always going to be the pricing is this versus here's our pricing page and here is what you can do with each setting, right? So the more that you increase this temperature, the more random the responses are going to be. The lower the temperature, the less random those responses are going to be, meaning that they're going to be more deterministic. So that is how you're able to create a chatbot that gives you really accurate responses when customers or clients are asking questions to your bot. Because the reality is, if your customer or client doesn't get an accurate response, they're going to be more frustrated than when they came in to begin with. And the whole point of using an AI bot is to get the most accurate response using AI. So by following these steps and by following these guidelines, you'll be able to make sure that your bot has the most accurate responses. So that's it for this video. Make sure you go watch this video, which explains step by step how you can create your own chatbot using Chatling. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.